All right. So, hello, everyone. Welcome to the Automating License Compliance and Resource Optimization webcast. In this webcast, we are going to be discussing an incredibly powerful partnership between IBM and Flexera. Specifically, within IBM, I represent Turbonomic. My name is Ajanish. I'm the head of product for Turbonomic, and we have developed an integration with Flexera's SaaS Flexera One platform that we believe will change the way how customers do IT asset management. And so with me on the call today is Steve Schmidt. Steve, you want to introduce yourself?
Everyone, I'm Steve Schmidt, Vice President of Product Management at Flexera. I've been with the company for over 20 years. And like AJ, I want to welcome everybody and echo the fact that this is a significant partnership for both companies.
Yeah. We've been lockstep for months on both the product and development side. It's been a very exciting engagement, and we look forward to the future. The roadmap's already very full. Okay, so Steve, if you want to get going on the slides, and then I'll.
Absolutely. Well, great. So first, I'd like to provide a little context at the macro level, some of the challenges that we're seeing IT leaders face. And I don't think any of these would be surprising, but I think they're useful to talk about individually. So there's at least four of them. And one is this great digital shift, the pace at which we're shifting the processes to be more digital and to use technology, specifically software, to address those. And in order to lead or keep up in this area, we need to move faster. And so resources need to be used differently. Second, there's clearly a skills shortage. There's a study that's been done that indicates that there's $8.5 trillion of unrealized revenue by 2030 due to the skills shortage. So there's a challenge that we have in capturing all of the opportunity. And as we know, there's quite a few resources, individuals that are moving from organization to organization, and retention becomes a challenge. Third, with regard to visibility into the IT estate, less than 25% of leaders, IT leaders, have complete visibility into their environments, and identify this as a challenge for them more broadly. They have the inability to make good decisions, right? So with no or bad insights, they're making no or bad decisions. And then finally, we've got on this list the ability to maximize ROI. IT leaders are challenged to find ways to optimize the technology they have. They may not know about solutions that exist, and they may have inefficient approaches, but either way, they can't afford that in a competitive environment. Stepping one level deeper into the context setting, some of the challenges specifically around application licensing and application performance, we see a set of items. In the upper left, there's a lack of visibility of those resources in a hybrid estate, either the assets themselves or the licenses associated with them. And without that visibility, again, you can't make good decisions. In the upper right, there's issues around the ability to optimize performance for business outcomes. And so we want to make sure that you make the most of your technology, which not only runs the business, but is the business in many organizations these days. In the lower left, we're referencing the fact that license spend optimization is challenging. Today, many of the efforts are manual to have that optimization, and we want to get to that optimization in a more automated way. And then finally, on the lower right, we talk about license compliance. So this is avoiding penalties, reducing exposure from a risk and security and cost perspective. And that too is often manual today, and we want to make that more automated. These needs apply to a broad range of software. And today, software is accounting for 34% of IT budgets. That's a massive area of growth. And it's a bit unusual that isn't an area that has the same level of management control as other areas of the IT budget. And so within that, we're looking to deal with a couple parts. On the lower left, we see reference to software licensing. So we want to make sure that there's an understanding, visibility, and optimization of software licensing, and then application performance, making sure that you can apply the appropriate rules and guidelines to make sure that applications are performing as appropriate as they should be. And so Flexera brings to the table a set of differentiators within the Flexera One offering. This is part of that overall challenge on the left-hand side that we're looking at before, where we're talking about software licensing. Flexera One is a SaaS-based offering that's been available for years. It's continuing to evolve, has many current users on it, and has some unique elements to it. And I'd like to quickly walk through the highlights of those. So the first column talks about being a definitive technology resource data set. And this means a couple things. One is that there's reference material, so that is a catalog of information about software and hardware and some of their attributes that is known to be true in the market that is applied. And this has millions of records. It's a significant compilation of that data. And then there's data about the specific environment of the enterprise that we're talking about. And so data gets collected in the discovery method, either through Flexera technology or through other technologies. Then these two get merged so that there's a clear understanding of what software and hardware exists in that environment and what some of those attributes are. The second dimension is having consumption intelligence. And this too applies a set of domain knowledge about license entitlements. So from license agreements and SKUs or part numbers and bundles, we have an understanding of what parts, what license agreements grant what rights, whether those are upgrade and downgrade and cloud use and dev environments. These different entitlements are captured and codified in sets of libraries. And then that gets applied to a set of usage that takes place in that enterprise. So once again, there's some reference material and some enterprise-specific material that's combined to do the analysis and provide a license position and understand where they stand today and what the options are to optimize going forward. The third piece is around automated portfolio governance. That is the ability to provide some automation to keep within the boundaries, to stay within policy. And Flexera offers some capabilities in this regard with regard to the use of license information and making sure that you've got the right set of licenses being deployed initially. But it's also making available through APIs the ability for other solutions to take advantage of this and take it a step further, which is one of the things we're talking about today with Turbonomic from IBM. And then the fourth piece is around hybrid IT optimization. And this applies to the use of different resources inside an environment, packaged software and SaaS and cloud. But it also means different types of optimization, the spend optimization, as well as the performance optimization that we're going to be talking about today. So I wanted to quickly talk a little bit about the way that this set of technologies has been received in the marketplace. So we've seen favorable reviews by market experts and analysts, whether they're talking about Gartner or Forrester. And these represent some historic ways that these technologies have been leveraged in software asset management, in cloud spend optimization, in cloud management platforms. But they're being brought together within Flexera One, and these leading capabilities help to deliver those technology insights and the technology value optimization that's needed more broadly. So this applies now across hybrid IT. And what has happened is Flexera's teamed up with IBM, the automation team, for a deeper partnership. And there are multiple parts of this deeper relationship that have recently been announced. And the first of these is to provide automated license compliance and optimization, which is the focus of this discussion today. So that's number one. This helps with both the compliance piece and optimization, two sides of the same coin. The second is allowing users to have a choice around how they want to respond to IBM reporting requirements and can use the Flexera solution as a certified alternative to ILMT. And this way they can leverage a single offering to provide that function, as well as their other needs around optimization of that software, as well as a broad range of software in their estate. And then the third piece is that the ability for IBM to take to market the Flexera One offering as an OEM and provide that to their customers as Flexera One with IBM Observability. That's the label that's being used for that offering. And so that leads us to the point where IBM is able to deliver this visibility and the insights with that offering, Flexera One for IBM Observability. It's referenced on the left. And then to combine that with the IBM Turbonomic capabilities in a broader suite of solutions, and they're valuable clearly on their own and when implemented in the same environment, but we've taken it to the next level and provided a connection between the two technically, and that integration is very compelling. So with that, I'll hand this off to AJ to provide a little bit more context on that Better Together story.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Steve, and that was great context. So just jumping into it. So essentially, let me frame the problem a little bit from a technical perspective. Today's IT organizations are under tremendous pressure to deliver applications and services faster with greater efficiency at exponentially larger scale and complexity. Our application resource management platform inside of Turbonomic is the only one that can automate decisions throughout the full application stack to make sure that every application continuously gets the resources it needs to perform while eliminating unnecessary over allocation. Essentially, if a customer only cares about cost, scale everything down, scale everything to the smallest possible size, and you can pat yourself on the back and say you saved a whole bunch of money. But the response that we'll get from every single customer on that is that's impossible. I can't do that because my applications need to perform. They run my business. So what Turbonomic is able to do is we are able to make sure that you scale things down as far as possible without putting application performance at risk. That being said, the only way that we are able to get customers to accept Turbonomic actions, to execute our actions, and even automate our actions is if we can prove to them that our actions are both safe and will not violate compliance with any constraints or policies that they have. This was the first use case that we went after with the Flexera Turbonomic integration, because Flexera is a continuously updated, auditable record of truth for all of a customer's software asset information. So if that data exists, we can then consume it and use it as the basis for constraining our automation inside of Turbonomic. So that's the first and easiest thing we did, which I'll show you in a minute, which is essentially us pulling information from Flexera, creating groups with it, creating policies with it, and using it for our automation decisions. The second thing that we're able to do with that exact same information is use it to enforce compliance. If we see things that are out of compliance, we'll push them back into compliance. And the third thing is the ability to optimize license usage. And I'll talk to you more about what that means in a minute. But for the integration itself, it's really a point and click solution. Once you have Turbonomic set up, once you have Flexera set up, and I'll show you this in the demo, all you need to do is add Flexera as a target in Turbonomic, and we will automatically start pulling in data into our system and applying it to the automation going on inside of Turbonomic. Where you see this other arrow going back into Flexera, that's where we want your help. We want to enlist as many customers as possible to work with us on helping us to refine the backlog and roadmap that we're putting together for this joint integration. We see a ton of potential for additional use cases we can cover with the initial integration within Turbonomic, as well as a lot of potential uses for a bi-directional integration that has a closed loop system where Turbonomic actions and the impact of Turbonomic actions show up in a more prevalent way inside of the Flexera One platform. But we need to work with customers to figure out exactly what that looks like and what the best path is for us to take. All right, so slide 10 here. So we already talked about this a little bit, but just to go through it in a little bit more specific, what this means is from a compliance perspective, Turbonomic is able to do two types of compliance-related actions. The first is placement. If a customer uses physical licensing, that means they license the physical cores in a server, for example, we are able to make sure that the licensed workloads always run on a licensed physical server. So not only does that mean that while optimizing performance in the rest of the environment, we won't move a workload away from that licensed server. It also means that if we notice anything that is not on a licensed server, that is out of compliance, we will generate an automated decision to bring it back into compliance, to enforce that compliance. The second is in terms of customers that use virtual licensing. Virtual licensing is typically done based on the allocation or configuration of the workload itself, or the virtual machine, typically. And so what we are able to do is Turbonomic is able to understand the minimum and maximum size available for the current tier or configuration of license, and we are able to limit the scaling decisions inside of Turbonomic to, the never go below or above the limits of the license. We can generate actions to go beyond the minimum and maximum, but you can set that to be in a different mode. So you can help facilitate discussions inside your organizations about whether or not it makes sense to change the license allocation that you currently have for a specific type of workload. So in both those cases, we will enforce compliance, but also facilitate discussions about what it would require if you want to do a little bit more, which actually brings us into the second use case, which is around optimization. So Turbonomic is always looking to make sure that you are your applications and everything in the entire stack supporting your applications are as performant as possible, that resource congestion, memory, CPU, storage, network is not causing performance issues in your application without unnecessary over allocation. With the Flexera integration, we are able to take license cost into account when we make those decisions. So from a scaling perspective, like we were just talking about, we will try to keep VMs as small as possible so that you can license as few licenses as possible in the workloads that are deployed in your environment. In addition to that, when moving things around the environment, we will do what we can to keep your licensed servers on as few licensed physical hosts as possible. What that will do is it'll decrease the amount of physical license servers that you have to have in your environment, which is a massive cost to customers. It is much more cost effective to license physical servers, but it is incredibly expensive for certain types of workloads like SQL. And we want to make sure that you are effectively using every dollar in your organization to facilitate as much innovation as possible without spending anywhere that you don't necessarily need to spend. So with that, I'm going to go into a live demo. Just give me 1 second here, and I will get that up. Okay, so sorry, I gotta switch back. Hold on. Apologize, I lost my ability to minimize this studio window thing. Always something. All right, great. So now you should be looking at my Flexera 1 instance. So this is the organization that our friends at Flexera provisioned for Turbonomic for us to use for the development. And so you can see here that we have a number of licenses configured in the Flexera 1 system. One thing I want to point out is just how easy it is to configure this integration once you have both systems deployed and configured in your environment. Up here, you have what's called the org ID for your Flexera 1 instance. That is available in other places than this, but I usually go to the URLs because it's right there and easy. And if you go into user settings, API credentials, generate an API token, and then boom, you have the two things you need to add a Flexera target in Turbonomic. So let's go into the Turbonomic system, and I'll be able to show you exactly what that looks like. So let me log back in here. So inside of Turbo, if you go to target configuration, the same as adding any other target in the system, you come in here, you find the target you want. In this case, it's Flexera, and you enter the organization ID and the refresh token, that API token that we just generated inside the Flexera system. Hit add, and that's it. In under 10 minutes, you will have Flexera data in Turbo constraining the automation that we have in our system. So the first thing that Flexera does is create or the Flexera integration does, is create groups in Turbonomic. So these groups, you can see that our virtual machines, hosts, are essentially telling us what things in the environment have what type of license, whether it's a virtual machine or a physical server, what license agreement applies to this set of entities. And this mapping between our system and their system in itself is incredibly powerful because these groups will be continuously maintained through the integration. I can tell you that on the Turbonomic side, we have had probably hundreds of thousands of dollars in service agreements with customers to create and maintain very similar groups. There's a lot of things you can do inside of the Turbonomic system if you know which things are running SQL, which things are running VMs, which things are running Red Hat, which things are running Oracle. There's a lot of power to just having these groups in the system. And if I just, for example, click in on one of these groups, you can see that I'm immediately taken to the full stack view, real time, of exactly where in my environment these workloads are and exactly what the risks are in the environment around these workloads. And then you can see here that these workloads are constrained by a policy created by the Flexera integration. And I'll show you a little bit more about that in a minute. But just having this view of your licensed workloads and being able to use it as the basis of actions inside of Turbo has a lot of different uses for a number of different customers. The second thing that Turbonomic does with the Flexera data is we create policies. Policies, for those of you who don't know, is the basis for all automation decisions inside of Turbonomic. There is, scaling decisions, placement decisions, how that scaling should happen, how HA should be respected, where things should be placed, where things shouldn't be placed. All of that is configured through policy. And the policies that we automatically generate through the Flexera integration help us make sure that we, A, do not violate compliance with any of the license agreements that our customers have, and B, are in the best place possible to assure the performance of all licensed workloads by making sure that the license deployment matches the resource demand of the licensed workloads. So, for example, the policy that we were just looking at before, what it does is it restricts the number of vCPUs that can be allocated to this group of SQL Server 2019 VMs. It says I cannot go beyond 24 cores. This will allow Turbonomic to continuously optimize without violating compliance by pushing these workloads, which are in this group of VMs, beyond 24 cores. Another thing that we were able to do are these types of placement policies here. See, this is a license type placement policy that restricts this group of Windows Server VMs to this group of Windows Server hosts. So with the placement policy of the type license, Turbonomic is able to understand, hey, these are licensed placement constraints. This is not just an affinity placement where I need to place this thing on this other thing. This is an expensive constraint where I should try to get these workloads onto as few licensed hosts as possible, because any additional hosts that we're running costs the organization a lot of money. But at the same time, Turbonomic is smart enough to say when and where you need additional licenses to support the performance of the workloads in your environment without violating compliance with your license agreement, because that's very important. So let's go in and look at some examples. So if I go here to this part of my environment, you can see here that this server has a whole bunch of different types of congestion on it. It is a very loaded server where I essentially have high amounts of ready queue, high amounts of CPU utilization, high amounts of memory utilization, and Turbonomic knows that I need to take action to alleviate this congestion in my environment. So it's telling me to do this, I need to provision 3 additional servers into this environment, but to provision these servers, I need to make sure that they have the right types of licenses. Otherwise, this is a meaningless action. If I don't provision a server with the right type of licenses, the workloads in my environment that are struggling for resources won't be able to get those resources, and it will be a meaningless action. So down here, you can see that I have the Flexera SQL Server 2019 and the Flexera Windows Server 2019 licenses both applied to this host where I need to provision a licensed host to satisfy the needs of these workloads. And that's because for a SQL VM, you need both Windows Server for the OS and then SQL Server for the database server. So that's one example there. There are other examples that I can show you here. If we go into this cluster, for example, you'll see that there are a number of placement decisions that are all about maintaining compliance with the underlying infrastructure. So this is moving things around for performance, but at the same time, these same workloads are constrained from a licensing perspective. And one last example that I can show you before we move on is if I go into this part of the environment, you can see that we're again provisioning licensed hosts and moving things around to alleviate congestion while maintaining that type of optimization. And if we go into this part of the environment, there are Flexera policies applied to this as well that not only limit what we can do from an optimization perspective while continuously assuring performance, but this is also saying that for these actions, not only do I need to have a certain type of license constraint, but I want to go through ServiceNow to get approval for these specific types of actions. So this allows our customers to feel significantly more comfortable automating these types of actions in their environment because they can continuously assure performance, eliminate unnecessary overallocation, while continuously enforcing compliance with the workloads. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen and move on to the final slide here. Or actually not final, I think this is the second to last. But just to summarize where we are, the two products together with Flexera providing a continuously updated audible source of truth on what sorts of license agreements customers have and where they stand in relationship to those license agreements overall. Turbonomic can then take that data and make sure that the deployed licenses in the environment are match the application demand that the applications running that environment has, so that you never use more than you absolutely have to. And while we do that, we're avoiding compliance issues and assuring performance. So this eliminates the need to overallocate on resources, avoids the potential for, call it true ups, end of service outages, renegotiations, anything that can happen at the end of an agreement that could cause you a problem. And one thing that I actually am realizing now that I didn't show you is those same groups in Turbonomic can be used for simulations and planning scenarios. You can do any sort of capacity management or future workload planning, migration planning around the context of those licenses once you have those groups inside of Turbonomic. So combining that with Flexera's capabilities to understand the implications around your license agreements, you can have a full stack, full picture, full cost of IT understanding of what would it cost me to move on to this next venture in my IT operations experience. So with that, Steve, anything you want to throw in on this slide here?
That was a great overview. There was a question in the chat about other types of integrations, and I have to say, when working together, we've identified a number of other very interesting opportunities. These were the ones that bubbled up to the top of the list based on customer and prospect demand. So the first ones we're talking about now, but there are certainly others that could materialize in the future.
Right. And so one thing on that to throw in is the analytics that I just showed you existed in Turbonomic previously. We've had this capability for a long time, and it's been one of our most powerful use cases for a long time, but we've not been incredibly successful at executing on it because we don't have the right data. So what we did with this integration was we were able to go immediately back to those same customers that have been asking us for this capability for a long time and say, hey, look, we got the data. So yeah, very exciting. So, okay, so with that, let's go on to, so the next steps here, biggest thing is we want to work with you. So we want your feedback, we want to refine our roadmap, and we want to get you as much value out of this integration as possible. So schedule demos with us. We are happy to take you through every aspect of this, answer every question you have, and then help you deploy this into your environment so that you can have your own proof of concept, not only to get the value out of the existing integration, but to help us refine the future roadmap for this incredibly powerful partnership. And with that, I think we're at the end here. So thank you so much. And if you have any additional questions, please feel free to forward them along. We will get back to them as quickly as we possibly can. So one other question here, just if we have a second, how would Flexera and Turbo integration support license compliance reporting? So license compliance reporting is a use case, I believe, inside of Flexera, which Steve can talk to more. And as Turbonomic takes automated decisions in the infrastructure, the updated inventory will be discovered and reflected back into Flexera. So.
That's exactly right. That information will come back and in effect to be a full cycle then as things get optimized and improved with regard to placement and the performance and using the data and policies within Turbonomic. Then we get a view of a new configuration of the estate that helps with making sure that we've optimized again.
Okay, I think that takes us through the list of questions that we have. So thank you so much, everyone. And again, please reach out. We would be thrilled to work with you.
Thanks, everyone.